Great. So the faculty in history's request demand is uh, is fulfilled here today. So we're going to just I want to quickly talk through a couple of takeaways before we move into talking about the recommendations that we were making. So the first is um, we need to answer students' big questions about generative AI. Um, what is it? How does it work? When is it okay to use? And how should I use it? And how can I use these tools to support my learning? And I think one of the things that NYU as an institution has done has been sort of surveying incoming students, surveying its students. And uh, it's apparent, if it weren't already apparent to us as faculty, huge use of these tools by our student body. And one of the other things that NYU learned is that our students expect us, they're expecting faculty members to offer guidance to them about these tools. So it's not terribly surprising that they're doing that. We are the authorities in their classroom. They look up to us. They're looking to us for us guidance and instruction and education and enlightenment. But as we've seen, or as we've just sampled a bit from some of these surveys and discussions of faculty uptake, there's a big disconnect here in terms of faculty in the humanities even using these tools. So it's a major question, which leads to a second major takeaway, which is that I think there's another slide there, Shayna. No, yeah, that's it. That faculty need actually, I'm sorry, go back.
No problem, Tom.
Um, there we go. So I think one of the things that we're seeing and is probably natural as a kind of response to this situation of really rapid technology development, entering into an institutional space that's used to certain ways of doing things, that in general is committed to certain kinds of traditions, um, is that there's been a big emphasis on treating AI as a matter of academic integrity. So a lot of statements are just like, if you use this, it's plagiarism, et cetera. And so I think we are trying to shift to an emphasis on information literacy. So we leaned into the assumption that the majority of our students come to our classes with a sincere desire to learn rather than trying to get away with something. Um, and so I think then our question is that we were really talking about was how can we model intellectual curiosity and scholarly responsibility in advancing student use of generative AI as integral to the advanced literacy of our students, right, as appropriate to the 21st century. Um, and how can explaining the appropriate use of generative AI in our classrooms, even when we're choosing not to use it in our classrooms, actually help foster the student trust that's necessary to teaching effectiveness and learning success? Okay, next slide. Um, so as we've seen, many, if not the majority of humanities faculty have very limited experience with NYU's sponsored tools, AI tools, Gemini and Notebook LM. And so the absence of knowledge about and experience with these tools precludes critical evaluation of student use and creative adaptation of these tools into the design of learning objectives, classroom activities, assignments, and assessments. Um, so this leads to a second point, which is that there's also, I think, a prevalence of suspicion, if not hostility, to corporate technology in general. And it is a fact that, corporate technology is actively, trying to monetize this technology. It's going after our students as customers, and that's part of the landscape here. Um, and what that also means is that many of our students are using non-NYU tools. They're using ChatGPT, they're using Claude, other kinds of tools. Um, And there are a lot of problems to that. Um, uh, and they don't have protection. They don't have privacy for their data in that. Um, so how do we shift um, from a defensive orientation of what might call the ban, punish, workaround, or AI proof school of dealing with AI to and move from presuming this kind of bad faith of students to actually addressing the questions students have and the desires that students have to actually learn, can they use these tools to actually do the kind of learning they came here to do? Okay. So the second key takeaway is that faculty need help answering, these questions that students have, and they need help to craft their own informed policies. And so the most important thing I would say, just personal experience and advice, is to just start tooling around with these tools, the NYU tools in particular, to understand what they might do, what they can do. And this is advice that Lucy's office would give. Like if you have an assignment you're often giving, feed the prompt into Notebook LM or into Gemini and see what happens. Um, so Notebook LM can do really impressive things. And it can summarize dozens of articles that have been uploaded into a notebook and offer a report or digest themes and arguments supported by examples. It can compile an inventory of metaphors and similes, for instance, if you're teaching literary studies. It can show all the passive verbs that are that we're perpetually asking our students to avoid in their prose. It can generate reports assessing theme, style, and context. It can brainstorm keywords and concepts, which it will elaborate with what it calls mind maps. And I just have a few screenshots here, right? So for instance, you upload, now of course, as a faculty member, you're saying, please don't read this on digital edition, but of course, digital editions for most anything can be found. So the student finds a digital edition of Cultivates, things fall apart, upload it and create a notebook for it here in Notebook LM. So this is what that looks like. And so you'll see there's immediately simply an AI summary given of the text right here. Next slide. Oh, backslide. I'm sorry, just one sec. So as you'll see on the right side in the studio, all these functionalities, all these little buttons that you can push do very different kinds of things. Slide deck, infographic, audio overview, video overview. So you don't want to read the book, but you want a nice little video overview. Boom. Next slide. So one of the things you could press here is a mind map, which is this. It's kind of a brainstorming device where you see some of the things that you could start to look at here. Each of these, you keep pressing the arrows, right? It'll start breaking it down into further. And you can keep doing this, right? So you can iterate different ways of brainstorming different aspects of the text. Next slide. And then finally, I just wanted to point out, right, this is a special concern to us here. I think anyone who's ever asking students to write an essay about material, this is when you press the create a report button. As you can see, there are many formats that this report could take. So here there's some suggested sociocultural analysis, governance protocol, conceptual primer, socioeconomic overview, essentially, and the options here that it will suggest will really much depend on the source. So if I uploaded a story by Flannery O'Connor, it would be pushing various kinds of basically generic essays around character, around voice, around themes, and that sort of thing. Okay, next slide. So I point these out basically just to make the simple point that AI is already present in our learning environment and present on the screens available at the push of a button that our students use as part of their learning every single day. And I think there's maybe more to be gained by experimenting with these tools and seeing what they can do and possibly working with them than acting as if those buttons aren't actually right there on the desktop of our students. Um, So one of the things that we sort of want to be thinking about in our future conversations is what particular opportunity do the humanities offer in a culture that's really socializing students into technological dependence? And how can we highlight what we have to offer as scholars and teachers in the humanities in the specific kind of learning activities that we design, the specific kinds of assignments, and how can we use the classroom as a space, right, for cultivating experience of and critical thinking about humanity, right, in a world that's being engineered for screen literacy. As part of our work, we came up with a brief set of resources, um, which I think, Shayna, if you can drop in the chat the link to that. And this is also available, I think, in the Office of Teaching Excellence and Innovations materials about our group. And in there, you'll find some really, I think, useful guidance about basic parameters you can establish on your syllabus from the provost's office. Lucy's team has several useful resources on retrofitting assignments, et cetera, et cetera. And on the bibliography that we put together, you can find examples of assignments that use generative AI as an object of critical and creative inquiry in the humanities. But what you may not find, right, is the answer to the question of whether or how we wish to integrate generative AI into the learning objectives, classroom activities, and take-home work of our own courses, um, in the context of our own disciplines. And that's really the purpose of our future work in building and expanding this learning community. Next slide. So generative AI is already present on our screens. And unlike other generative AI, Gemini and Notebook LM are part of NYU's suite of Google tools, affording data privacy that's not available with ChatGPT, GPT, that should be Claude, and other tools. And we propose that we will try to understand generative AI as part of our shared commitment to advanced literacy, re-articulating objectives and practices of humanist pedagogy, with the basic building blocks, reading, writing, discussion, for learning environments that actually include generative AI. What are the components of the critical thinking we seek to cultivate in the humanities, right, through specific learning activities inside and outside the classroom? I think this is a great opportunity for us to recommit ourselves to what it is we think we're doing and why.